After storming their way into Dale, led by the overzealous Carrick in his assigned mission to feed Dariss to the fishes, ironically, they quickly find themselves in a little trouble. Just when it seems they have safely escaped an army of angry tooth-takers, they run into the tooth-taker himself. But as Carrick taunts Dariss into a fight, it seems everyone is forced to learn the consequences of Carrick's actions, as Dariss easily dispatches of them, one by one. But just when it seems like the party has finally suffered a TPK, they wake up the morning of the same day, and they realize they must have got themselves into a time loop! With this newfound advantage presented to them, their objective is clear. Use the time loop to gather intel and find a weakness to take down Dariss, since he's too strong to beat in an honest fight. Nadar convinces Tywin to start repeating the charm person's spell on the Sharkin guard each day, willing to re-watch the Sharkin rip out his friend's heart each loop, in order to ensure he always gets his wings from the potion. Then, they decide to lag behind Dariss this time, following him via rooftop to his branding warehouse. After the Tooth-Taker has been in there for more than 10 minutes, Carrick decides to encourage them to walk right inside, since they have nothing to fear now that they can respawn. So they all head inside to see what Dariss has been up to since time started having its midlife crisis, and discover the secret of Dariss's shark tooth amulet. As the party learns, the Sharkin were never a natural race after all, instead an artificial transformation created via magic, specifically the amulet. As the party realizes Dariss has been transforming his recruits into Sharkin for his Tooth-Taker army, Nadar can't help wondering if he regrets not sticking around long enough to earn such a powerful promotion. When Dariss spots them, he immediately questions why Nadar has returned, and what happened to the rest of his original crew. Nadar answers his question with a question of his own, as he proves himself to be the official lawkeeper of the party, largely thanks to his sacred ability to pay attention. Nadar asks Dariss Tooth-Taker if he's actually Cole Skinner, the human with a limp that stole his warhammer from the magical emporium 10 years ago, and has been using the shark fin amulet to hide his true identity. Dariss's reaction to that expositional question reveals two things to the party. One, Nadar was spot on, and everything he just said was true. And two, they have approximately 10 seconds to live for that discovery. After a fresh respawn, they once again make their way back into the city with Nadar's acquisition of wings, as they are left with one dire question. If you cannot destroy a magic item, and Dariss's shark fin amulet is indeed magic, then how can they possibly make it drop Dariss's overpowered sharkin form? Still trying to figure that one out, they make their way back to the branding warehouse behind Dariss again, this time planning to do a little stakeout until he concludes his business there, and leads them to his next location for the day. After 2 hours of waiting around, the party spots Dariss making his way back outside, and heading back down the street towards the Presidium. As it turns out, the party almost didn't need to bother trying to keep up at all, as they would have heard where he was otherwise. Within the Presidium, the party could hear Jane Skinner giving her brother an absolute earful. Even the concrete walls didn't prevent the party from eavesdropping outside. It seemed Jane had just discovered that the so-called curse of the amulets that turned them all into Sharkin wasn't a curse at all. It was Dariss. For whatever reason, Dariss had decided to lie to her for all these years, keeping her in Sharkin form that she never asked for, under the pretense of keeping her safe. Yet Jane, who had lost the chance to marry the man she loved, lost the chance to have children and start a family, who had lost the last 10 years of her life, was less than thrilled to learn that her brother could have dropped her form at any time. Feeling sufficiently awkward listening to what should really be a private argument, the party decide to use this distraction between the two of them in order to get to the Presidium's teleportation circle unseen. It isn't surprising that sneaking by the siblings prove easy, as it seems both of them have forgotten there is a whole world still going on around them. And thanks to the power of teleportation, the party finds themselves within Labrie's Capitol building. Carrick immediately leads the party to go and speak with his cousin, Cyrus Greenhill, the Viscount of the city. It will prove well for them to inform Cyrus of Dale's planned invasion of Labrie sometime tomorrow, and if Labrie can muster an army to fight back against Dariss, they may be able to kill the Tooth-Taker after all, and complete Vulcan's assigned mission. Yet once again they run into another roadblock, when they discover that Cyrus is in another castle. As it turns out, he left yesterday afternoon per the Pope's recommendation. He was to meet the Triton's leader in their capital city of Wolen, and negotiate an alliance of their militaries to deal with a rise in attacks from the Sea Elves. While the party have certainly lost the rest of their deck now, they still have one more ace up their sleeves. Rebecca Tuttle, the Archmage, of the Magical Emporium. With luck, they hope, they will be able to use her knowledge of magical items to help find some solution to bypass the powerful sharken form created by Dariss's shark fin amulet. Plus, failing that, they could just try to borrow all the legendary magical items they could carry to kill Dariss. Surely Rebecca would be open to that idea, if it allowed the party to save her entire city, right? But alas, they don't get the chance to find out, as they discover Rebecca Tuttle isn't here either. After taking a moment to realize that the Magical Emporium's interior is always changing depending on the day, they hear the voice of Simon the Beholder speaking to them, acting on Rebecca's behalf in her absence. The party learns that Rebecca curiously also left yesterday, apparently going into one of the outer planes in search for a powerful devil. With a sneaking suspicion, they ask Simon who exactly sent the Archmage away from the city to complete this mission. And their worries are confirmed when Simon tells them it was the Pope who sent her away, apparently to go after a lead the Pope had found regarding the Gravelord. They thank Simon for his help and make their way back out into the street to debrief. They all rather quickly come to the conclusion that they are now completely stumped. It feels as though everything they could have done to improve the situation needed to happen yesterday, before the time loop began. And then, just like that, Carrick has an idea. Given that Vulcan has a long-lasting relationship with the god of time, Dariss, it might just be possible for Vulcan to work out a deal that could send them back in time by one day. But as they head back through Labrie's teleportation circle and find themselves at Lostwick's archive, they spot She still in the library with an ancient book in his hands. And as they quickly ask their furry friend what's up, they quickly realize he's not in the best mood right now. She shows them why, as he reads the history book to them and describes a large-scale battle from many, many years ago, involving the Sunlight Army. The casualties of the battle were apparently colossal in scale, with a sea of corpses that spanned the length of a city. But the worst part was that the Sunlight Order wasn't fighting against another army, but just one little elf girl, younger than 10 years old. The party are obviously horrified by that information, but question why it disturbs She so much, considering the Sunlight Order are his sworn enemies, given that he's a part of the Nocturnals and all. But she goes on to explain that this little elf girl was rumoured to have had affiliations with the Nocturnals, at least prior to this battle. There's no mention of any other acts of mass genocide around this time, yet this matches up with the rough timeline that the nocturnal population was also wiped out, leaving next to none to preserve the order. The Sunlight Order did ultimately win the battle and slay the little girl, but not before she wiped out most of the known Sunlight Order too. Finally, the artwork depicting this battle, and the images of this little girl, have various accounts of the survivors from the battle, apparently having heard the little girl refer to herself during the battle as the Nightingale, harbinger of death. She admits to them that he faintly recalls Mirren mentioning something about Nightingale a few times, especially when he was still very young. But it seems once again his strange memory loss is keeping him from the important details. She has spent his time poring over every inch of information that he could find on this topic across the entire archive, trying to find something to explain the one last thing that bothers him the most. After hesitation, the stressed-out tabaxi turns and finally shows them a depiction of the little elf girl. And the party notice immediately that the so-called Nightingale has the same pale, moon-like eyes that she has. Trying not to think about that, and especially trying not to let she think about that, the party lead their furry friend back outside with them to go and speak with Vulcan one more time. Making their way out to the Lost Lake, they see no sign of the ancient turtle. But suddenly, Vulcan appears atop a ship, soaring out of the water below the lake, and then proceeds to simply remain floating there. Given that airships don't actually exist, the party has quite the extreme reaction to this revelation, at least until Carrick reminds them to chill in the presence of his mentor. As Vulcan once again flips down to speak with them, Carrick humbly apologizes for failing to accomplish his mission so far. After Vulcan makes it clear that he's aware of the time loop they are currently in, he reassures them that there is no reason to be worried. Everything that's happening is fated to do so. Carrick proceeds to explain that the path they're on is all well and good, but they actually need to turn around and go back down that path for a whole day's walk. Vulcan ignores the terrible metaphor from his apprentice, and simply closes his eyes, standing there, unmoving. Just as the others start to worry the old man has had a stroke, they suddenly notice time around them has begun to turn back, with night coming and going in the span of seconds, and suddenly, time settles on yesterday morning. Vulcan opens his eyes and confirms his request to Notarius was granted, and they are now free to proceed with whatever plan they see fit. And now, as fate demands, they have everything they need to get to Labrie in time to warn their governments and stop Dariss Toothtaker from leading an army to conquer the island. Yet even now, Vulcan still didn't tell them what fate actually had in store for them, or Dariss.